Live. First and foremost, I sincerely apologize to the hundreds of viewers that were waiting. We were casually 15 minutes late tonight because I was having a continued hiccup, unfortunately, trying to get everything set up with the template to the stream going live. It wasn't going live the way I wanted to, so please let me know as everyone first chimes in live on a replay how the audio and the visuals look and sound. That'd be greatly appreciated. But how's it going, everybody? I'm feeling electric as always here. There we have December 11th this evening, almost 8 p.m. Eastern, and the finale day of the winter meetings hosted there in Texas. David Stearns is far from being done adding players. Could we see another move or more on the horizon for the Mets tonight? Hopefully, but what we have seen is Juan Soto is officially a New York Met. We're going to highlight what that means for the Mets, all the key details on Juan Soto officially landing with the Mets, our further reactions, and filled with excitement to say the least. From there, we're going to get into all the latest here throughout the winter meetings. We have some key tidbits from David Stearns speaking to the media today. Something stood out about that. We'll get into his latest remarks with the media, as well as everything that we've heard at this point, from Starling Marte trade rumors to Garrett Crochet and now Jonathan Huasca off the board for the Mets as they were a starting pitching and reliever target. First, Garrett Crochet goes to Boston in a Sox-on-Sox crime trade, and then we see there the Yankees bring back Jonathan Huasca after a reporter and Mike Rodriguez over the past day said that he was going to the Mets. So more inaccuracy here from reporters that we have seen out of DR especially. We have a lot to highlight on not only Roki Sasaki, but certainly on guys in Sean Manaea and Pete Alonso. There's a lot of optimism on that front. We'll get into the latest remarks there and how the Mets look like that they're destined to hopefully bring back both. And speaking of a schmuck, let's talk briefly here now, and I wasn't talking about a schmuck prior, but I am now. Carlos Narvaez, or actually, I sincerely apologize. I'm going to backtrack. I saw Narvaez in catcher and automatically thought it was Omar. Former Mets legend said absolutely nobody, but the Red Sox just signed Carlos Narvaez there with the Yankees in exchange for Elmer Rodriguez Cruz and international bonus pool money as well. So that's completely separate. I apologize for that. I just got the update on my phone. But all right, guys, we have a lot to break down. I know we're going to spend plenty time to do exactly that. Rival time should be a BetUS prop. It really should be, Andrew. That's pretty hilarious. Thank you so much for chiming in. Again, guys, I'm so pumped up to get into this. We have Juan Soto is officially New York Mets. Steve Cohen, David Stearns have shared their remarks on Soto. We know when he's having his presser. Everything is what we're going to touch on right here, right now, along with answering as many of your comments, questions, and concerns as we possibly can throughout the live show. But let me do a quick roll call for everybody before we deep dive this one. We got Scott H. How you doing? Andrew, Jay, Goomba, Lefty, how are you? Jeff, we got Rimbero, how you doing? James, Buzz Talk, Anthony, ZS, Goomba, John Rossi, Adorable, Nick, how you doing? Dre, Zern, Daniel, Ramon, Anthony, how you doing? Jacob, my amazing editor, Mr. Chicken, Haram, great member, how you doing, Mr. Wallace? Scott Sandler, how you doing? Going up the list here even more. We got Matt, we got Michael Huff, we got Thomas, we got Anthony, we got Eddie C, great member, Dominic, great member, Brandon, how you doing, everybody? Omar, how you doing? Dave Kaplitz, great member, longtime supporter here, how are you? Luna, Malone, Europa, we're going up the list here, Brennan, Easy, thank you guys, Sean, Apollo, Ghostway, great member, thank you all so much, Edwin Castro, great member, D-Max, Steve Lawn, Juan Diaz, all fantastic members. Corey, how you doing? Thomas C, thank you guys. Everyone come one, come all as we break down the latest of Metsland. Really appreciate you guys spending your evening with me, as I certainly appreciate these donations coming in right away from the following: and Moonshadow, great member, and John, thank you guys both respectively. We have the $20 holla from Moonshadow, thank you, my man. He says, the Yankees have become the Dallas Cowboys and the Mets are becoming the Kansas City Chiefs. Book it, baby. I hope so. It would be fitting for Yankees fans, in which are a large contingency of Yankee Cowboy and Laker fans, that would in fact come to fruition, right? Thank you so much for the donation. John with the dono says, do you honestly think the Mets would get one top rotation starter? Define top, because if you think top is Corbin Burns, then no, the Mets are not landing a Corbin Burns this offseason. If you're thinking Sean Manaea, who's a guy who has a the ability to be an ace caliber starter, but isn't going to be your clear ace throughout the year per se? Yes, that is in fact true. Same thing with Walker Buehler to a degree. On the outside, looking at Nick Pivetta, obviously, and then when you look at other avenues in the trade market to lesser extents than Jesus Luzardo, etc. But to suggest that the Mets are going to land a top rotation starter, we need to have context as to what does that definition mean, because top to me can be very different from what a top rotation starter is to you. You can be starstruck on Corbin Burnes when that is more than likely not going to happen for this Mets team. D-Mac, thank you so much for the $5 I appreciate that, D-Mac. Need to ditch the international shortstop to make max dollars for Sasaki. Sorry, not sorry. Is there a petition we can sign? D-Mac, thank you for the donation. Again, I would like the Mets to bring in Elian Pena. That is the stud shortstop of a prospect that they have on a $5 million signing bonus that they're expected to sign in the beginning of the IFA, the International Free Agent Signing Period, which starts right around January 15th. But with the emergence of Roki Sasaki and knowing you have to use that same bonus pool money, the Mets, as David Stern was quoted saying yesterday, we're going to give this our best shot. You know, it's not going to be for a lack of effort in Sasaki's pursuit. And in the case of the Mets, they would love Sasaki, and they know he's going to cost anywhere from $7 to $10 million. And the Mets can get more out of the current bonus pool money that they have, because you can trade upwards of 60% of your bonus pool money each year for teams. So if the Mets get any lucky suitors there that are, lucky sellers rather, that are willing to part ways with a couple million, then that is a route the Mets may consider going down. Don't be surprised if it happens. So we'll talk about Starling Marte as well when it comes to the bonus pool money too. Great question. Rimbero with the $5 holla. Also, everybody, if I didn't emphasize it enough, the Rule 5 draft happened today, so we're also going to naturally touch on all the details from the Rule 5 draft, who the Mets lost today, because they lost some notable people in the farm. Not so much notable on the quality of the talent we've seen performance-wise at the minor league level, but more so on the name recognition of how these guys, how long they've been in the system and what they meant to the organization. Rimbero, thank you for the $5 holla. Rimbero says, are we signing Manaea and Alonso? Thanks for all you do, Wardy. Thank you so much for the donation, Rimbero. Simple answer to that is there's increased optimism for both those things to become a reality. Yes. Am I going to guarantee that the Mets bring in Manaea and Pete Alonso? No, I'm not going to guarantee that for you, but it is certainly a possibility, and it's looking like a more increased possibility with how things currently stand. Jeff, thank you so much for the $5 holla too. I appreciate that, everybody. But folks, listen, let's start off Madeline. Thank you so much for the kind words. Let's start off by getting into the amazing news. We got to start with the amazing news, everybody. Let's see it right here. Juan Soto. Let's get to the Juan Soto news. There he is. Bang, bang, bang. Love to see it. Poison, Vinny, thank you guys for the donations. I will get to them after I break down thoughts here on Juan Soto. The Mets have officially announced the Juan Soto signing, everybody. He passed his physical today, and he will officially now have his presser for the Mets as of tomorrow. You heard that correctly, everybody. Tomorrow, live on SNY's platforms at 3 p.m. Eastern, Juan Soto will be officially having his presser, and in response to Juan Soto having his presser and how excited I'm going to be, I teeter with wanting to go live during the presser or after, because I could live react with it, but at the same time, I think it's best if I watch it like each and every one of you, ingest that, write down my keynotes, and then I'm going to go live right after this presser tomorrow with what is going to be potentially one of two live shows that we have on the platform tomorrow regarding the Mets, not only with the Mets Free Agent Frenzy live shows or Big Mets updates, but earlier in the day, we will have right around midday there a Juan Soto reactionary stream to how his presser went, the key takeaways, and everything in between. But yes, folks, it's official. Pinch yourself. Don't worry. You're not dreaming. And yes, he's rocking number 22. That was actually part of the deal with the Mets, that Soto would be getting this number. So while there was a potential hiccup of like $200,000 and having to pay for all the reported jerseys made of 2022 for Beatty or this past year or so, it looks like that's going to be covered without a problem, especially with a $765 million contract. That makes it easier. But yes, Juan Soto jerseys are officially underway. They are officially on sale. You guys can see it there at the Citi Field shop along with online right now. And the exciting news, everybody, I don't know if this is live update for everything yet, is when you initially look at these photos, these have the smaller Soto font from the 2024 season. But don't worry, at least in the Mets team stores, I can't confirm this online, but I do know the Mets team store, as as soon as you can start buying them tomorrow or whatever it's going to be, they have back to the 2023 format. So the font is larger once again. You're also going to have the MLB logo above the stitching where you have the neckline stitching and not below, as idiotic as they went about it Nike this past year. So yes, Juan Soto City Connects, black jerseys, you have the royal blue, you have the patented pinstripes, you got them all. They are there in the team store for you guys whenever you want to get a chance to get your hands on one. Again, I cannot confirm nor deny if the online version of these jerseys will be updated how they were back in 2023 where the font was larger and better, but I do know for certain that it will be that way when it comes to the team store at least. So guys, get your Juan Soto jerseys, and it's okay if you're not in a rush. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon, thankfully. On a 15-year contract, the Mets can void that after fifth-year option. Not complaining too much. And this is what the Mets had to say on Juan Soto officially signing. Steve Cohen and Alex Cohen on the signing, everybody. Let's look at this. This is a seminal moment in franchise history. Juan Soto is a generational talent. He's not only bringing staggering historical statistics with him, but also a championship pedigree. Our amazing fan base is very excited to welcome Juan to Queens. Congratulations, Juan. Shout out to Alex and Steve Cohen for their tireless efforts throughout these negotiations. Without them and their tremendous efforts, not only on the financial front, but in the case of Alex Cohen, especially on the hospitality front, that really was another nice little X factor that benefited the Mets here. Let's get into other remarks having to do with Juan Soto that I got for you guys. Here are all the contract details for Juan Soto, folks. And this comes courtesy of John Heyman there. Let's see. Award bonuses for Mr. Juan Soto on the 15-year, $765 million deal, including a $500,000 bonus for first and MVP, a $350K for second, $150K for third, a $1 million bonus there for subsequent MVPs, plus luxury suite for home games, 4 premium seats at home, security for player and family on home and road, uniform number 22. Again, he got everything that he was looking for. Sports media, thank you so much for the $2 holla. I really appreciate that. It means a lot. But those are all the details on the Juan Soto contract now. And now here, what David Stearns had to say regarding Juan Soto and the coveted star now officially coming to Queens. And I quote, "Today's signing further solidifies our organizational commitment to consistent championship competitiveness. Not only does Juan provide historic levels of on-field product, but his joy, intensity, and passion for the game mirror our budding culture. We are thrilled to add him to our team and look forward to watching him watching his excellence for years to come." That is David Stearns, our president of baseball operations, guys. Again, it is reality. Smash a like and subscribe on as you chime in, folks, as we break down the latest in Mets land. Juan Soto is officially a New York Met. We get set for his pressure that officially begins tomorrow. In the meantime, we're going to also touch on everything that transpired today with the Rule 5 draft. So let's do exactly that. And I was initially putting notes on every little detail that was transpiring today, but let's get into the keynotes here, courtesy of our guy and Michael Mayer of Metsmerize. Michael Mayer, for those that don't know, does a great job writing for the Mets through the Metsmerize blog, and he has been in attendance there in the winter meetings in Texas. For the Major League phase, the Mets actually passed on picking anyone up in the Rule 5 draft. However, the Mets did lose Mike Vasil initially to the Philadelphia Phillies. Mike Vasil, who posted an over 6-year ERA in AAA last year, was a once coveted starting pitching option in the Mets farm, along with Dominic Hamill, who was also exposed in the Rule 5 draft. Dominic stays in the Mets organization. Mike Vasil, however, was picked up by the Phillies, but wait, there's more. He was then traded shortly after to the Tampa Bay Rays. Rays with their pitching lab see something in Vasil. Don't fault them, because of course they do. And speaking of the Rays, they didn't stop there. They took our little Nestor Cortez out of the bullpen. If you know, you know. Nathan Lavender, who looked oh so crafty there with his pitches, with that long leg kick and really holding that leg up there in spring training last year up until he had Tommy John surgery. Well, Nate Lavender, as he will continue his rehab process, will now be doing it as part of the Tampa Bay Rays organization. So Lavender, who in my opinion would have been a really fun pitching option for the Mets to consider a little bit later into the year once he's fully healthy, he is no longer part of the organization, so the Tampa Bay Rays are picking up a lot of Mets pitching. For the Mets, they really didn't do anything other than they selected Michael Hobbs from the Dodgers, and Michael Hobbs was the only minor league selection that they made. They lost some other minor league pieces, but nothing truly of note. To share some brief notes here on Michael Hobbs, the lone pitcher that the Mets found themselves picking up today in a minor league acquisition there for the Rule 5 draft between themselves and the Dodgers. This is what our pitching contributor, Isaac Rothman, who will be back on the platform soon, so be on the lookout for that. Shout out to you, Isaac, you beauty, on breaking down all the latest on the latest Mets pitching moves and great threads on X, and also just fantastic analysis on pitchers in general, a lot of advanced analytical information. He states the following here on the latest pickup from the Rule 5 draft, the lone pickup from the Rule 5 draft, and Michael Hobbs for the Mets from LA. Mets Rule 5 pick Michael Hobbs is likely a bulk guy since the stuff doesn't jump off the page. Cutter is his best and main pitch at -0.5 induced vertical break and -3.6 horizontal break at 88 miles per hour, a 29% whiff rate, and a 2.09 expected slugging. Sinker is the main fastball, 12.1 and 10.4, a 93.7, sitting there and topping out right around 96, and a 326 slug that you see there in the case of his fastball. He also mixes in there that we see with the curveball as well. But again, Hobbs, a guy that's going to be an innings eater for you at the minor league level, pretty much at most. There really isn't anything else to harp on there when it comes to the Rule 5 draft. Nothing drastic for the Mets, but they did lose two notable guys in the organization that fans have known the past couple years at least. Mike Vassell, more notably to some, and to others, Nate Lavender, as they are now both with the Tampa Bay Rays. What will be Beatty's new number? That's a good question. I don't know what Beatty's new number is going to be, but I think what Beatty's new number could be, honestly, if he wants it, is number 2. You know what I mean? Like, listen, Omar Narvaez isn't here anymore, and I'm pretty sure Omar was rocking 2 last time. I don't think anyone actively has 2 on the roster, so if Beatty wants to stick with just 2 now that he can't be 22, I wonder if that's a number that he would consider taking. I could be wrong. Let me know how you guys feel about that. If Beatty isn't traded, and if Beatty actually stays in the organization and impacts the Mets at all next season, what number would you like to see him rock for the Mets in 2025? Let's hear it in the chat, everybody. Sports Media, thank you so much for the $2 holla. Sports Media says, if we trade Marte to the Royals, who would we get? That's a good question, but if we traded Marte to the Royals, I think it would be more so on just trying to get, a solid arm, maybe that has some control behind it as well when looking at the relief market, because that's exactly what the Mets are expected to do if they do trade Starling Marte, and we'll get into that shortly. Ferrari Frank, a long-time follower, great member. Thank you so much for the donation. Ferrari Frank says, we're a long-time no talk. I want to mention on that, I had a son this past April. Congratulations, Ferrari. That's awesome. Seriously. I'm very, very happy to hear that from one dad to another. Congratulations. That is so happy. That is so awesome to hear. So happy to hear that, Ferrari Frank. God bless to you and your family. I hope you guys have a tremendous holiday season. And let's go Mets, baby, with Soto. Thank you so much for the $10 holla. God bless to you and yours. Very happy to hear that. Wardy, it's obvious that you have not tasted success with the Mets. That is correct, Roy Estrada. Breaking news. Any Mets fan that's born beyond 1986 doesn't really know all that much of what consistent success is. We'll get back to you in 5. So silly. But regardless, exactly I couldn't agree more. Seriously. Enthusiasm until you're temper my enthusiasm? No, I will not temper my enthusiasm. No fan is going to tell me how to fan. That's one thing, especially Roy, who, if I'm not mistaken, isn't even a Mets fan. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. Understood there, Roy. But listen, I am aware that the Mets were not born back in I'm aware that the Mets won the World Series when I was not born. That is correct. I'm glad you could put 2 and 2 together. Wardy, which pitcher do we target? There's multiple pitchers that the Mets are currently targeting that we're going to get into in a second, everybody. But before we get into a little bit more on those pitchers, let's hear the latest remarks from David Stearns' mouth himself. And then from there, we're going to get into some key reporting that we highlighted earlier today. But we'll, again, when it comes to Starling Marte, the Mets meeting with Nick Pivetta, the latest on Sean Manaea, Pete Alonso, and everyone else in company. David Stearns on losing Nate Lavender and Mike Vassell. Oh, of course the audio isn't going through the way it's supposed to. Give me 1 second, everybody, as I try to troubleshoot this.
Go between having a player selected and actually losing the player. That's the reality of this. But look, those are 2 good pitchers. We knew, certainly because of the unique circumstance with Nate, and because of Vassell's pedigree, that these were possibilities. And that's all part of the roster management puzzle that we try to fit through. And we simultaneously wish them well and also hope to get them back. Yeah, you never want to lose pitchers or anything.
So those are the remarks from David Stearns. Again, Stearns is confident. Also have to bear in mind that the guys that were exposed in the Rule 5 draft for the Mets, this is not a David Stearns ran Mets where he drafted and single-handedly picked up Vassell, Lavender, all these guys. He didn't do that. This was prior to his regime, and this was during the regime of not only guys in Zach Scott, but most notably and Billy Epler. So when the Mets do show a further willingness to trade away some key prospects this offseason in the right situation, as they attempted for Garrett Crochet, it just fell short because the Red Sox were a more appealing destination. Red Sox have more to give up and they have a deeper farm. Makes sense. And for the Mets, they know that, again, if other unique situations similar to Crochet present themselves, then they will go out of their way and try to make sure that the deal can happen there. David Stearns has been very diligent in the trade market all offseason long. Let's see. Do I use a Stream Deck? I used to use a Stream Deck, Buzz. I haven't in a little bit, but I have it. I've been letting it collect dust, if I'm being honest. That's just one of those things I should set up again because I had a hiccup with it once, and I'm not overly tech savvy, so if I get frustrated, I'll just forget about it for a bit, and that's on me. Let's see. Michael, the $2 holla, thank you so much for the donation. Michael says, dope, Pat. Hope the little guy is great. I appreciate that, Michael. God bless you and yours as well. Thank you guys for the compliments on the hat. I got this back on... I want to say I got this back on Mets Team Store a little while ago. Either that or 47. One of the two. I love it. They have these for all teams, a similar style, and I absolutely love them. The only thing I don't like about it is this little mark you see on the brim. I don't know how, but one day I grabbed my deodorant, it fell, and it like dropped, and it perfectly made a line on here that I haven't been able to get out yet. And I'm one of those people that gets, very much bothered by the little, like the OCD kicks in when I see a little stain or something. So I try to ignore it. Manuel, thank you so much for the $5 holla. Manuel says, Mets next move, Manaea, Burns, Pete, and Wardy's corner at Citi Field. I tend to agree on the last part, the latter there. Thank you for the donation, brother. Sadly, Corbin Burns won't be happening, but Manaea and Pete are definitely a great possibility that we'll highlight shortly. Vinny with the $2 donation. Thank you so much for that, Vinny. Would you rather have starting pitching Castillo, Valdez, or Luzardo? Out of those three, it's Luzardo has the most upside out of those three. Who I think is the best currently of those options is Castillo, and who I think is the best playoff performer from what we've seen is Valdez. So again, you can validate all three of them for different reasons. And Vinny, thank you for that donation. I realized that you donated that same question a couple minutes ago and I didn't get to it in time. So thank you for sending it again. I know you didn't need to do that, but it is appreciated. Thank you. Sorry I wasn't able to get to it right away. Poison with the $5 holla says, I think Darren Ruff might be our final piece of the puzzle. I tend to agree. Thank you so much for that donation. That's hilarious. You guys really cracked me up. But let's get into some other remarks here that we have, I know, on Mr. David Stearns from this past day. I'm pretty sure I have some remarks on David Stearns, if I can find them. Or is this from yesterday? No, that's from yesterday. I know we had more remarks from David than what I have right now. Hold on. Am I going nuts? I could have swore that there was at least a couple more remarks from David Stearns today. Let me double check with each and every one. You guys will just give me 1 second as I do exactly that. And then we'll continue to break everything down. Jim Duquette. Appreciate Jim's thoughts, but don't need them right now. Oh, yeah, there was a key quote from David Stearns in his conversation with Steve Gelbs today I wanted to highlight. And it's in this, not going to play the whole video because it's 5 minutes long, but we'll get to what I want to hear most at David here.
David, we've talked a lot already about Clay Holmes and why you guys think he's a good fit to transition from reliever to starter. How much do you rely on Carlos Mendoza and his intimate knowledge of Clay Holmes when making that decision as well?
I think any time we have a manager or a coach who has personal history with a player, that's a huge benefit to us. And it's a benefit to the player as well because they have more familiarity coming into our organization. So we're fortunate that we've got Mendy. We also now have Desi Driscoll, who has familiarity with a lot of the Yankees pitchers. And both of those, both Mendy and Desi, were very helpful in providing context and helping us understand who Clay is as a person and giving us confidence that he can make this transition.
So right away, what stands out, as we highlighted plenty on the platform, and that's why I told you guys when the Mets hired Desi Drewskull from the Yankees, and it's Drewskull, not Drewshell, so now I'm not tongue-tied if it's one or the other anymore. Thank you for the clarification, David. I appreciate that. But the reality is that by bringing Desi in now from a lateral move from the Yankees to the Mets, this was automatically going to benefit the Mets and their chances on bringing in some former Yankees and just guys that, again, are more analytically minded, are willing to adjust their pitch shapes and really fine-tune their arsenals in a way to get the best out of them and in the best implementation for the organization that they'd be landing with, which in this case would be the Mets. Jonathan Waska, as we come to find out today, decided to go back to the New York Yankees after Mike DePortes initially so-called reported that he was going to the Mets at 3 years at $27 million. One, that money was too much, too many years, it didn't feel right, and now Waska goes back to the Yankees on a one-year deal with a second-year team option, I believe. Waska is a guy that I think would have been awesome for the Mets, but I'm not losing sleep over at all because there's a plethora of reliever arms for the Mets to get, and obviously Waska still had a preference with the Yankees versus going to the Mets, even though he has a relationship to a degree with Carlos Mendoza and Desi. But in the case of not only Luis Severino with Mendoza last year, but now in the case of both what we have seen in Carlos Mendoza and Desi Drewskull, that relationship is a great one with Clay Holmes to get the best out of him, make him feel as comfortable as possible right away. And in the case of a guy in Juan Soto, who even though he doesn't have too much of a relationship with Desi, they were both part of the Yankees organization this past season, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more former Yankees in the years going forward, more top former New York Yankees that hit the free agent market because, say, they don't necessarily want to go to Hal Steinbrenner right back to him on a discount. That's where the Mets are going to come knocking, and that's a very exciting thing. So we'll find out more, obviously, on what happens with the Mets and the bullpen front, because hopefully we're going to find out news on that in the next couple days. But what we know, at least right now, is that Jonathan Waska, who I honestly thought was a slam dunk, I said I'd be surprised if we didn't land him, and I genuinely am surprised that we didn't land him. I think part of that is my fault for believing Mike Rodriguez more than I should have in the moment, so noted, won't be doing that again. And secondly, it was also just the reality of how much Jonathan Waska just checked off boxes that make sense for the Mets and David Stearns and how he goes about things. Not only with guys who know what it takes to win in New York, playoff experience during his time with the Yankees, but a guy that's coming off of a down year due to injury, so he's a perfect bounce back candidate. Further reason as to why I saw the Mets feeling like a nice fit for him there. And Dylan Cease has been in trade rumblings. We have heard that. Do I think the Mets will go after him? We'll find out. You know, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't put anything past the Mets at this point when it comes to the trade market, especially after losing out on Garrett Crochet. I'm sure the Mets had a pretty sizable offer on the table for Crochet. So if the Mets are willing to do that, I'm sure that they are willing to an extent with other pieces, especially if they have some control. I will say this, it's not a guarantee in the case of the Mets and their pursuit of these players that they are for certain going to obviously land the guys that you want to have. But at the same time, we do have to trust in the David Stearns philosophy and what they're going to be able to do here. And that makes me excited as well when you look at what their options are in the trade market. Because after you lose on a Garrett Crochet, right away, a couple guys that stand out right away to me, Jesus Luzardo, Framber Valdez, more on the veteran end. And the Padres, Dylan Cease and Michael Cain. Michael Cain was part of that Juan Soto trade. How hilarious would that be if the Mets ended up trading for former reliever turned Cy Young caliber starter and Michael Cain to have him and Juan Soto on the New York Mets? Both the Padres and Yankees are shooting themselves in the foot big time if that were to be the case. But AJ Preller also is in a bind for the Padres because they don't have money to spend. They're still struggling when it comes to a TV deal, which has a lot of money back behind it. They're without their late owner, obviously, and Peter Seidler, and he was a heavy factor into their drastic immediate spending, and there was an urgency behind it that was in hand because of Seidler inevitably going to pass sooner rather than later. Now that they don't have that money and that lack of certainty of support from ownership, the Padres have kind of backed themselves in a corner where they can continue to be a perennial contender, but it's going to be far more relied on their player development and their in-house options than it will be on their splashes because they're not even interested in trading an Ethan Salas, who's their top catching prospect, one of the best in the game in Ethan Salas. He's so young and so good. And because of the reluctance to trade a guy like Salas, that's why the White Sox didn't trade Garrett Crochet there to the Padres, because Padres shot down a trade, as a matter of fact, to acquire another former White Sox, initially Dylan Cease a year ago. Now, fast forward a year later, they were in talks for Crochet. Fell through, though, because they wouldn't budge on their top prospect there in Salas. Instead, they get a haul of a number 3, a number 5, a number 12, and a number 7 prospect ranking per ESPN from the Boston Red Sox, headlined by by Kyle Teal, the coveted catching prospect. So there was clearly an emphasis on catching prospects, which further would make sense as to why they wanted Ethan Salas so much. But to bring this all back to the point of the Mets here, the simple reason is David Stearns has been very diligent in the trade market. He was very diligent last offseason as well. He just couldn't hit on anything because the value really wasn't there. It just didn't make sense for the Mets to give up the assets, and when they knew that they could probably do enough in the free agent market. Furthermore, as to why many Mets fans should not expect the Mets to go absolutely scorched earth in the trade market for a key pitching piece, but it can happen. Just don't expect it per se, because we still have free agent options in Manaea, Walker Buehler, Nick Pivetta that we're going to highlight here shortly. And the key thing about all those three is that they're free agent options. And the key thing about the one in Pivetta is that he has a qualified offer tagged him. So because he denied the $21.5 million QO from the Red Sox, the Mets would have to sacrifice their 3rd and 6th round pick in the upcoming draft should they sign Pivetta. I'm sure there's reluctance to do that, but we'll talk in a little bit on why Pivetta is still an appealing fit for the Mets, why Stearns likes him, why they met in person with Nick Pivetta there, or at least what we know they met. They met to a degree either in person at the winter meetings or over Zoom calls. Either way, something along those lines happened that we know reportedly today, and I'm sure there's more going before David Stearns heads back there to New York, assuming that he hasn't headed back already. Ed Flood, thank you for the donation. I think we make a move tonight. I hope so, Ed Flood. That'd be a lot of fun, right? I think it would be awesome. Sports Media says trade Marte, Beatty, Clifford, and Dome. I don't know who you meant with the last guy, for Arenado and Helsley, and move Vientos to DH. Arenado, we'll touch on as well. Simply put, Arenado has the Mets as one of 6 teams that he'd be willing to be traded to. The problem is the Mets don't want Arenado. They don't want the final couple of years of his contract. His bat has completely fallen off a cliff the past couple of years. His defense is still elite. We would have a tremendous man at the hot corner, but at the same time, I think the Mets do not want to have one man stuck at DH constantly, barring changes, which I think further reaffirms why I don't foresee that to happen. We'll see. Stearns could definitely prove me wrong, but I don't see the Mets doing a trade. Especially, I don't see why in God's name you would see a team like the Cardinals trade Arenado and Helsley and then bring in Marte. Like, that makes such little sense. And then Beatty, even if we take out most of his contract, it really doesn't make sense. Beatty, okay. Clifford, okay, but at the same time, I don't want to give up Ryan Clifford for Nolan Arenado. I'm going to be honest. I don't. Like, that's how much I'm disinterested in Nolan Arenado. There's appealing aspects to Nolan, but this is the same schmuck that turned down the Mets when the Mets tried trading for him when he was in Colorado a couple years ago before he went to the Cardinals. He's always been small market, but now that he's aging, he's 33, going to be 34 the next year. Now that his bat is completely nowhere to be seen, he's like, I want to go to a team that's going to give me an easy ride to a championship. Well, listen, buddy, you've had opportunity. I don't fault you for, your years in Colorado because you were committed. You were a leader there. It just a damn shame that they couldn't do enough with you with Trevor Story and all the other key pieces that they had. But now you get to St. Louis and, they flop the potential that they had with you. Just because that is the Cardinals' mess doesn't need to be the Mets' mess. And I don't think the Mets are going to go out of their way for someone in Arenado until proven otherwise. You guys can let me know how you feel about Nolan Arenado in the chat, but simply put, I don't see it happening. ZS, thank you for the subscription as well. If you guys haven't already, please make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. We are just around 800 subs away from 30,000 on the platform, the largest Mets platform here on YouTube, not directly affiliated with the Mets themselves. And it's all thanks to each and every one of you amazing Mets fans. So thank you guys so much for that. It really does mean a lot, and I look forward to the continued content that we will be rolling out all off-season and regular season long. It's going to be 2025 is going to be our biggest year yet now that Juan Soto's on the club. This year was ginormous in so many ways, so I'm just damn excited to see how everything is going to take place. No, I do not foresee Corbin Burns happening at all. We do have some other things I want to touch on in our notes with you guys in a second, so just bear with me. I'm making sure that I don't miss anything here. I don't believe I missed anything in my notes either, but I'm just, again, by notes, I'm sorry, I meant to say what we have on Twitter, that there isn't any new news and stuff of that nature. But okay. We talked about Jonathan Wazga. We talked about the Mets. We also have Scott Boras, who shared some remarks as well on the Mets. They made it clear to us they're willing to go sign more than one great player. So, what does that mean, everybody? The Mets aren't done making moves. But what does that also mean? Pete Alonso, Polar Bear Pete, that we know very well, is out on the market That is a key piece that is still obtained by Scott Boras, and it looks like that very well could be the next big splash for the Mets that isn't on the pitching end. We do have more on Alonso that I'd like to share. I do have something bookmarked from earlier. Well, we saw initially Soto pass the physical, which was great. Then we also saw on Alonso, and this article everybody from SNY, Pete Alonso is reportedly meeting with teams as his free agency intensifies. Let's talk about this for a second, because Alonso, as we know, is really interested in coming back to the Mets. There's mutual interest there. And in this article, it is quoted the Mets have serious interest in retaining their coveted star first baseman. When I say star, I mean more of a home run, home slugging type star, not, an all-round star. In the case of Juan Soto, they're apples and oranges here. But we know that the Polar Bear wants to return, especially after bringing in Juan Soto. Why wouldn't Alonso want to be back with the Mets, especially now that Alonso is finally with the Mets at a point where they are looking like a perennial contender? And all of Alonso's years as being a Met, this is the first time ever from ownership down where he has the confidence that he does, rightfully so, and the organization and what they are trying to do here. Because of that reason, I fully expect not only Alonso to continue his heavy pursuit of potentially returning the Mets, as he's actively beginning the negotiation process meeting with teams, the same way that I expect Alonso to return to the Mets, unless he gets heavily swayed elsewhere. Maybe the Texas Rangers or the Houston Astros that could look for a first baseman, sway him with the state tax differences, and make him want to be still with, again, a contending team, but just not in the same big market they'd have in New York. I can understand if Alonso's a little disinterested by the media aspect, because he himself was not a guy that's absolutely loved the media, but he's also embraced it fairly well, even when I would say that things haven't necessarily been the best words come out of his mouth. He hasn't handled every situation well, but he has, again, taken to a chin, and I appreciate that about Pete. And there's no denying that Polar Bear Pete Alonso to bat behind Juan Soto would just do wonders for this Mets team, and again, give them a deep lineup, one of the deepest ones in all the National League in 2025. Certainly one that can go toe-to-toe, more so with the Atlanta Braves, because if the Mets have themselves at least a 1-4 next season of Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, Mark Vientos, I mean, that's a very nice 1-5. And then, yes, it might not be as good quality to the same extent of the Braves with Ronald Acuna Jr., Matt Olson, Austin Riley, Ozzie Albies, when they're all hitting, at their best, Marcell Ozuna as well. But again, it really gives you a lot more depth. And you look 1-5, 1-6 of this Mets team, and you're feeling fairly confident about their opportunity to succeed every night. If the Mets can do what they did last year with how their offense was constructed, I have a lot of confidence in what they're going to be able to do next year. Frank, thank you so much for the $10 donation. Appreciate that a lot, Frank. Sports Media with the $2 houses. Imagine Sandy Alcantara being traded to the Mets. Sandy Alcantara is a workhorse when he's healthy. He'd be awesome. But if I'm going to be completely honest, Sandy Alcantara has all that ace caliber. He can be a bulldog. So I see the appeal there. But I also see a hell of a lot of appeal with Jesus Luzardo. A lot of appeal with Jesus Luzardo. So much that he's a guy that I'm going to keep talking into existence until hopefully it happens. Haram with the $5 donation. Thank you so much for that, Haram. Haram says, did Stearns give any update on Sproat? Did you see him starting the season in the major? We haven't heard anything much on Sproat to this point, but I'm sure that we will find out more on Brandon Sproat as we inch closer to spring training. Definitely a guy that I imagine will start the year in AAA, given his lack of sample size last year. But if he really wows them in spring training, he could, again, play his way into a potential rotation spot. But the Mets are currently operating where they need to land one more starter at least. Not that's a necessity, but that they're still going to prioritize it. And that they also still may find themselves potentially landing Roki Sasaki if things come around when we get to the point of Roki Sasaki, and that can happen. Again, you already ordered your Juan Soto jersey, Alberto Soto? That is awesome, my man. Very happy to hear that. Love it. Jesus Luzardo, as I touched on everybody, is a guy that I think makes endless sense for the Mets. Controllable, same amount of years as Garrett Crochet. Will cost you a decent amount less than Garrett Crochet. As a guy that's coming off of a down year due to an injury-riddled year with Miami. He's only 27 years of age. He throws absolute gas. I think Luzardo and this pitching lab would be disgustingly good. So Jesus Luzardo, bring him around, baby. I want him. I like Dylan Cease too. Darvish is hell of a not. Darvish's contract is terrible. Last thing I ever want is you, Darvish. No, thank you. Not a chance. Not a chance in hell. We're taking you, Darvish. Dylan Cease, though, is a different circumstance. Cease still has another year, at least on his contract. Not sure if he's a full rental or not. I'm actually going to double check that real quick. Is Dylan Cease a full rental or not? Dylan Cease. Contract. Yeah, Dylan is a rental. Further reason as to why you shouldn't expect the Mets to overpay if they were looking to try to acquire Dylan Cease. I like Dylan Cease a lot. I loved him during his time with the White Sox. I think it would be a little silly for the Padres to trade him this soon, but at the same time, he's a rental. The Padres are very good at churning out consistent pitching talent. I'm sure that they have a level of confidence in landing Sasaki. And I also know that when it comes to the Padres, that, they are not going to extend Dylan Cease more than likely, and they'd probably want to maximize on the return that they could get for someone like him right now, with potentially still MLB-ready talent, knowing that they are a team that's in a bit of a financial bind at the moment, and knowing that Dylan Cease is at a hot price, a high commodity rather, because of the fact of how expensive all pitchers are right now in the free agent market. The trade value for these guys is exceptionally high, and we're going to see guys like Dylan Cease, again, if he does get traded, even as a rental, I'm sure it's going to take a very solid return to land him. I mean, in the case of the Padres, they're going to be looking for a nice little haul for someone like him, and if it's a Michael Caine, forget it. That's going to be a really, really good haul is what it's going to take for those guys, understandably so. Thank you for the donation earlier, Haram. Frank, thank you for the $10 holler earlier as well. Appreciate you guys greatly, folks. If you haven't already, thank you so much for chiming in live on a replay and smash that like and subscribe on as we break down the latest in Mets land, everybody. We're going over all the latest news, rumors, you name it, and answering all your questions, comments, and concerns on key players that the Mets are either reportedly linked to or on the cusp of being reportedly linked to. And speaking of reporting, more so inaccurate reporting, this is why we didn't do a video on today, is because he has yet to prove himself as credible. He has continued to be, unfortunately, flip-flopping. He had some of the Juan Soto details right before Heyman and others got to it, but then he also completely botched the Loaiza contract, which is unfortunate because Mike DePortez says, according to my sources, again, take it with a grain of salt, Luis Castillo is being proposed to several teams as a trade candidate. The Yankees, Mets, Red Sox, Phillies, and Cubs are some of the teams that have shown interest. Other than that, Corbin Burns has been heavily linked there to the San Francisco Giants, which, again, would be a very Giants thing for them to do. How you doing, Big Pomp? Happy to have you in here, brother. Hope all is well. Would I prefer Jock Pearson or Winker back? So, I would prefer Winker back because I think for the vibes and I think for the position flexibility, you got to go with Winker. But if you're talking about overall bat potential, Jock Pearson is the better one. Jock is the better home run hitter. He's a guy that's more of a standalone DH, especially against righties. But if the Mets want to go with a platoon DH option, that's fine. But again, Winker still gives you at least outfield flexibility where you can put him in the corner if you have to. Whereas in the case of Jock, that slow mofo ain't going anywhere if you put him in right field or left field right now. Not that the Mets would do it much with Nemo and Soto commanding things, but not something that I think the Mets want to purposely do. I don't think the Mets want to log jam that DH spot right now, unless they tell us that they do, and that'll be that. So I want Winker back. I need him back for the vibes, just like Iglesias. But if Winker doesn't return, I'm not opposed to Jock at all. He would be nasty. Jock in this lineup as well. Oh my God. But so is Winker though. Like I think Winker would be nasty. Not as much with the power, but I think going gap to gap, electric vibes, especially postseason play. Like Jock has good postseason numbers. He's proven it to an extent. Not great postseason numbers, but solid. He's had his moments. In the case of Winker, we all saw what he did in that run. He's fantastic. Jesse Winker is the exact kind of player you do not want off your team because you hate going up against him. He's such a pain in the ass, but he's so awesome when he is on your team. Enrique, thank you so much for the $2 haul, Enrique. I know you're excited to watch those Mets in LA next season. It's going to be absolutely electric. Guys, Will Salmon, our friend Will Salmon, who I will mention, barring changes, because I'm not for certain if we're going to be going live tomorrow a second time, but be on the lookout, folks. If we do go live potentially more than once, Will Salmon, who was initially going to join us tonight, however, his flight got changed, so he was flying out at Texas around 4, and I wanted him on for an 8 p.m. segment tonight, so that couldn't happen. But Will Salmon, who does a great job covering the Mets for The Athletic, including this quote that we're about to break down, may be joining us tomorrow tomorrow evening, so be on the lookout for that. Either way, Will was on the platform a couple days ago, only for like 10 minutes, because then Clay Holmes got traded. We live reacted to it, and then he had to go make his article on it. But we're going to try to bring Will back on the platform, hopefully as soon as tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. Vinny, thank you for the donation as well. Would I like the Mets to get Carlos Santana at DH? No, because I think that kind of goes directly in hand with not wanting like a sole DH guy to be in the DH, where Santana has no positional upside outside of giving you first base reps, in which that won't happen if you bring in Alonso. Okay. From Will Salmon on the possibility of Starling Marte being traded. The Mets are willing to pay down some of Starling Marte's contract and potential trade to improve their chances of a better return. Pat Ragazzo, who initially had the reports of Starling Marte potentially being dealt today, shout out to you, Pat, great friend here on the channel. Pat stated how, according to his sources in the reports, that the Mets are not only willing to eat the majority of the salary that it'll take there for... do I know Tim Brennan? Not personally, but yes, I know Tim and his what he does for The Athletic as well. Does a great job. Both him and Will do a very good job covering the Mets and The Athletic. But furthermore, when it comes to the Mets and Starling Marte here, reportedly they can not only eat the contract, the majority of it, but they're looking for a reliever in return, and depending on how much they eat will obviously help increase what type of return that they get for the veteran outfielder Marte. Now the question is, what kind of team makes sense for Starling Marte? More of a salary dump, while the Mets are also getting a solid reliever in return. I'm thinking of a team, and funny enough, there is a team that stands out to me right now. I'd actually have to look at their outfield configuration. So let me look at their outfield configuration right now. But there is one team out there that I think makes a lot of sense. And you guys are going to get a kick out of this. Yeah. All right. Well, I have my answer. Why not send Starling Marte back to Pittsburgh? All those endless years of me looking at my TV, seeing the Pirates be more of a pain in the ass than they need to be for the Mets, and saying to myself, man, I would love for Starling Marte to be a Met. Then he's a D-back. Then he is a Marlin, and then he's a Met. Sadly, Marte got to the Mets a little too late for how we could appreciate him. But if Starling is going to be traded, if he is going to be dumped, I think the Pittsburgh Pirates make a hell of a lot of sense. The Pirates would bring in a veteran that can help them as they're going to look to contend, being on right around the outside looking into their wild card, but they're going to push really hard there. Pair him back with our guy Andrew McCutchen. They can split time. I know Andrew's more of a DH right now, so Marte can command right field for them. They, other than outside of Brian Reynolds, they don't really have a lot there at the moment. I can't speak on the Pirates farm too much, but just speaking on recency bias, and also the Pirates more than willing to bring back a guy, in which I know Starling has a lot of great memories with Pittsburgh. It would also make a lot of sense, I think, for Marte to go back to where he started, potentially end his career there, or get closer to ending his career there with the Pittsburgh Pirates, who, again, he's still a capable player, a very good contact hitter, gap to gap. But, if the Mets keep Marte, I'm not crying about it at all, but I understand why they may want to salary dump him. And if they do, no better team than the Pirates, who do not want to take on his contract at all, where the Mets could say, hey, we will eat the majority of this deal for you. We'll eat, it's a $20 million deal. We'll eat at least 16 mil, if not more for you. We'll eat the majority. We'll handle that just fine. You just take on, maybe a mil or two, whatever it needs to be. And in return, we just want a reliever out of you. Now, Colin Holderman, a reunion would be really cool. Jared Jones and Mitch Keller would be tremendous pitching options for the Mets that I've heard rumblings on, but nothing reportedly connected with the Mets, so I'm not going to emphasize that right now. But that is something that could happen, maybe down the road. Holderman would be awesome. I don't see that happening, though. You know a guy that would be interesting, honestly, a little bit? David Bednar. You guys might think I'm crazy. David Bednar had a bad year last year. But he had a bad year last year with the Pirates. What does that mean? He's a bounce-back candidate. Let's look at David Bednar. This is a guy the Mets won plenty in recent years when he was more of a hot commodity in 2021 and 2022. Because I know Bednar was blowing every save last year. Every save imaginable, right? We already got one blown save artist in Clay Holmes, so we might as well add another now in Bednar. If I can type, my goodness. Let's see. He's Thomas. I know you're saying Bednar's trash, but let's understand the context of this trash, okay? Again, Let's bear that in mind, because Bednar doesn't need to be your closer. He can be your setup man, right? If Clay Holmes is going to blossom as a starter, you still need a setup man next year outside of potentially Jose Budo or Daniel Nunez as in-house options. Are you going to bring Ryan Stanek back? That has yet to be seen. Let's look at David Bednar. I'm telling you guys. Okay, Bednar still has 2 years left to control. He's 30 years of age. A 5.7 ERA last year, a 4.2 expected ERA, a 9K per 9 to a 4 walks per 9. Bednar the season prior, a 2 ERA, a 2.8 expected ERA, a 11K per 9 to a 2.8 walks per 9, and 67 innings. The year before that, a 12K per 9 to a 2.7 walks per 9, a 2.6 ERA. You guys are casuals if you think Bednar's trash. He had a down year. It happens. A lot of relievers go through down years. A lot of them are kind of Jekyll and Hyde. They're a bit of a roller coaster. All right, David, get on the phone, David Stearns. How many more times do I need to tell you, David? Go out, send them to Starling Marte, eat the entire contract, and get David Bednar's ass to Queens. Sign me up. That way, the Pirates get a fan favorite that will help them with ticket sales, which I know that that's their most important worry. Pair that with McCutchen, Skeens, Hayes, and everything else they got going, all electric in Pittsburgh, and let's bring in Bednar. Yeah, you guys don't think that David Bednar would bounce back with Germany Hefner, Desi Driscoll, and David Stearns? You really don't think that there's potential there? When, mind you, this is only this past season that he's felt a little bit off a cliff. Not even, mind you, in a down year for Bednar, an expected ERA of 4.28 is nothing to be like, oh my God, the guy's cooked. Do it. Do it. I'm going to, if I timestamp this live stream, I'm going to have an emphasis on everyone needs to be listening here on my David Bednar take. Again, the Mets will probably go down various avenues, and the Pirates might not be interested in that either. Well, you know, like the Pirates may say, listen, Marte's fun. We'd like to bring him back. We do have a role for him, but, you know, giving up Bednar is still too steep for us. We're not comfortable doing that. And the Pirates say it, then okay, it is what it is. But I think between Bednar coming off of a down year, with his value as lowest at the moment, Marte's value is higher the more the Mets eat his contract. These are his peripherals last season. Again, fastball sat 97 in the 92nd percentile in Major League Baseball. He's got the splitty and the curve. Oh, baby. Let's look at 2023. Oh, my God. That's a word I shouldn't see on air. It's my less than 18-year-old viewers, so I won't do it. Ken, thank you for the $2 holla. Ken says, want Stanek and Winker back. Also need more starting pitching. Thank you for the donation. And I agree with you. I want Stanek, Winker back, and I want starting pitching as well. But yeah, seriously, if you happen to add a mid-prospect, as someone in the chat said, you do that too. Bednar's 2023 profiles, his 2022, drastically different in 2022. 2023, gas. Holy all right, guys, you see the trend? We got ourselves a roller coaster, like many relievers in baseball. 2021, David Bednar, sexy. 2022, David Bednar, a mixed bag. 2023, David Bednar, sexy. 2024, David Bednar, a mixed bag, and more negative than positive. What does that mean? 2025, Bednar is going to be a dog. Him as a setup man for make it happen. That's all I got to say. Final thing I'll say on David Bednar. All right. Thank you for that donation too, Ken. I appreciate that. That was fun. I wasn't expecting to talk about David Bednar today. Okay, let's get into some other keynotes because I'm sure there's more Scott Boras remarks that we can highlight and listen to. So let's actually, before we talk about a bit more on Scott Boras, let's actually highlight the latest on Sean Manaea because we do know that the Mets are actively involved in Sean Manaea, and according to all the latest reporting that we've heard to this point, Sean Manaea to the Mets is looking increasingly likely. It's looking more of a reality right now than you could probably argue than Nick Pivetta, potentially argue than Walker Buehler. Not that the Mets haven't been actively involved with those respective markets of players, because they certainly have, but it's just the reality that Sean Manaea, not only the on-field product, which was tremendous, again, ace caliber, Cy Young caliber for the Mets this past season when he was right, but also that arm change with that arm slot like Chris Sale throughout the season was huge. And we know that for Manaea and the Mets, it's not only the on-field product, but it is that off-field product, that clubhouse personality was so great. He emphasized how much he appreciated the Mets. He was crying tears of, bittersweetness there when the Mets were kicked out of playoffs from the Dodgers, how much this team meant to him and, how important this year was for him. He just got married too, so, he's feeling amazing as a nice new hubby, a married man. Sean Manaea, I firmly believe the Mets will bring back as long as he doesn't stretch a guaranteed 4th and or 5th year. I think that is where things become a little bit more steep for the Mets to want to bring him back when he's already 32, 33 years of age, but not impossible. In the case, however, of some other guys that we talked about, especially in one who was linked to the Mets as of this morning, again, the Mets were linked to him a couple days ago, but they've officially met with Nick Pivetta. Now, Nick Pivetta is a fascinating one, and we talked about him a little bit earlier, and we will again. Nick Pivetta is, in my opinion, one of the more intriguing and crafty options that the Mets could consider this offseason. And the reason why this is for Nick Pivetta is a couple things. One, Pivetta fits the bill. Pivetta fits everything that David Stearns has been about. It's been about guys that can be a quality arm for you to help frontline your rotation at your best and also be utilized where if you don't work out in certain areas, we're going to throw you in the bullpen. We may make you a multi-inning reliever. Shit, we need you to close out games even. Nick Pivetta, in 38 games last season, 170 or so innings. He had a lot of innings last year. We saw 38 games, just 16 of them started, so the other were as relief. Fantastic year there. Ridiculous amount of Ks, over 12K per 9. This past season, he pushed it up north of 11K per 9 to a 2.2 walks per 9 for Pivetta as a starter. And Nick Pivetta has also had 3 consecutive seasons of giving, again, quality length to the Boston Red Sox more than anything. He has been an innings eater, he has been a dog, and he has really found-tuned his game in the lab where the Red Sox have had the past couple years, or they certainly didn't have during his time with the Philadelphia Phillies. Pivetta with a 4.14 ERA, a 3.59 expected ERA, some of the best expected numbers among all eligible pitchers in Major League Baseball in 2023. And as we look at his savant numbers, let me just show you guys what you're getting in Nick Pivetta. Again, not the sexiest thing at all, but you can see why someone in David Stearns especially likes someone like him. I think the only reason why the Mets are not going to let Nick Pivetta is not because of the lack of interest. It's there you have plenty of interest in Nick Pivetta. 180 innings in 2022, 142 as a starter and reliever 2023, 145 this year as a starter that we saw. But the numbers look strong. Those are all the baseball savant numbers. 88th percentile in K percentage, 80th in walk percentage. Got barreled a shit ton. It was barreled hard last year that we saw. Elite extension given his 6'5" frame, 210. And the ground ball percentage not there. Again, you're getting a lot of swing and miss from Pivetta, who's got the 4-seam sitting 94, a nasty sweeper, a disgusting curve with so much drop and break. The cutter and the slide piece do a nice 5-pitch mix that the Mets could utilize. That's the appeal there with Nick Pivetta. So the main reason why they won't land him is simply because Nick Pivetta is having himself a comp pick tied. 2 comp pick ties. After the Mets gave up their 5th round pick, and $1 million in IFA bonus pool money for 2026, the Mets also would have to give up their 3rd and 5th round picks for the upcoming year's draft if they sign Nick Pivetta because of him rejecting Boston's qualifying offer at $21.5 million. That right there is the biggest bugaboo, and that right there is why I do not foresee the Mets to land Nick Pivetta. But if they do, I'm all ears. I'm all open to it. I'm not opposed to it, but I can see why David Stearns would have reluctance with all those key draft picks that he'd have to give up otherwise. I really do like him, though. I really do. Nick Pivetta is one of these guys that is such a sleeper, really a sleeper pick. If he gets picked up by somewhere not named Boston and is in the Mets, I really do think that he's someone that will thrive. But he just needs to be in a lab, too. Don't have him in a batter's park because obviously you're going to get what you're going to get. And talking about a batter's park, for him to have the success that he had in Boston leads me to believe that he could have a hell of a lot of success in Citi Field and a pitcher's park far greater. And with David Stearns, Germany Hefner, Desi Driscoll, their entire pitching lab that the Mets have going there. Now, going from Nick Pivetta, everybody, let's talk about another starter that's been connected to the Mets for a number of days now, that's still active in the free agent market, and that is going to be, yes, you guessed it, Buehler. Mr. Walker Buehler, who pitched like a Cy Young caliber starter for 3.5 years with the Dodgers, went down with TJ, just came back from TJ this past season, which is why you have the inflated flat 5-year array, similar to Jesus Luzardo, because they're both dealing with injury-riddled years, either coming off of injury or they dealt with ailment throughout the season. Coming off of ailment was the case of Buehler here from Tommy John, and Walker Buehler has been boxed out of that illustrious, star-studded rotation for the Dodgers. They just need to be healthy. And yes, the Savant numbers might not look sexy, but listen, it's his first year back from Tommy John. The expected ERA was basically a full run lower than his baseline ERA at 5.38 last season. You saw how dominant he was in the playoffs as he got better and better. You saw the velo uptick greatly there with the velocity and the fastball. You saw the sweeper look oh so deadly there as we got into deep late October. And you know Walker Buehler, after winning the World Series, closing it out in the Bronx against the Yankees in Game 5 of the World Series, is looking for a nice payday, high AAV on a short-term deal. That's when the Mets come into play. Walker Buehler is this year's version of a Manaea, of a Severino. But one thing very important to emphasize, Walker Buehler has had more success in his career than both Luis Severino and Sean Manaea, you could rightfully argue. If you go back to the 2018 season, yeah, you can make that argument with Severino, but Buehler really had a 3.5-year run of being Cy Young caliber-esque there for the LA Dodgers. And every year, I always ask myself as a fan, how is this Walker Buehler guy doing it? There's nothing about him that comes off overwhelming, but he's just a constant pain in the ass. Similar to Max Fried for me, and that's exactly why I'm happy that Max Fried is no longer a problem for us Mets fans to have to worry about in the NL East for the rest of his career. Yoshima, thank you so much for the donation. Siri stole home, and oh, that's awesome. He stole home in the Dominican Winter League. That's awesome. Going to be electric. I cannot wait for Jose Siri. Yes, Jose Siri and, Jose Siri and Juan Soto are going to be perfectly fine together. Walker Buehler, folks, listen in. 2018 numbers, 137 innings, 9.9 K per nine, 2.4 walks per nine, a 2.6 ERA, and a 2.8 expected ERA. 2019, 180 innings, 10.6 K per nine, a measly 1.8 walks per nine, a sub-1 home run per nine, a 3.2 ERA, a 3.3 expected ERA. 2019, we talked about that. So 2020, 36 innings, short sample size, 3.4 ERA. 2021, 207 innings for Walker Buehler, a 9.1 ERA, a 2.2 walks per nine, a 2.47 ERA, and a 3.08 expected ERA. 2022, 65 innings, goes down with injury, a 4 ERA. K per 9 was down because, again, he needed surgery. Walker Buehler has a better track record than what Sean Manaea and what also has done in Luis Severino throughout their respective careers. So if we're going to go on, oh, this is a reclamation project, but oh, Sean Manaea and Severino had history, no one has better history in their career in a 4-year span than what we have here in Walker Buehler. So to anyone that's pessimistic about Walker Buehler, I understand some pessimism based on his regular season numbers from 2024, but I also understand that you have to be a closed-minded, pardon my words here at times, but a little bit of a schmuck to be closed-minded enough to not understand the context of the projection throughout the year going into postseason and knowing that he'd be his second year removed from injury. Just like how Frankie Montas, yes, he didn't have the sexiest numbers. He had a 3.8 ERA, though, in days where he had 5 days rest in between starts last season, and still performed 31 starts in his first year back from significant shoulder injury, Montas, with the Reds then turned Brewers. Both those guys have a lot of upside, and both of them, I think, are going to bode well for the Mets. Montas is already a certainty that they have signed, but in the case of Buehler, he is the guy that I'm very excited about. And yes, I know the Knicks are down by 9. They're collapsing in the third, but there's still time. Still got a whole fourth quarter to go. I'm not too worried yet when it comes to our New York Knicks. If you're staying with average pitchers, then rebuild that bullpen. They're going to continue to, though. You have to realize the rotation of bullpen go in hand with each other. There's not a situation where the Mets and David Stearns, where they're looking at the rotation like, let's have all these uncertainties and let's just throw them on the wall and hope something sticks. That's not how they're operating. And I think the Mets proved enough from this past year to show exactly how they hope to operate and get better at operating. And when it comes to their lab especially. But yes, I'm not at all concerned. If the Mets bring in Buehler as their final pitcher and then potentially Lance Sasaki, I'm fine with that heading into 2025. Might not be the sexiest rotation on paper, but a lot of guys are going to exceed expectations. Brandon Sproat is hopefully going to break out of this rotation. Who knows whatever the hell else is going to happen throughout the year for the Mets. Just another thing that I think people forget about easily, you're writing off Kodai Senga. Kodai Senga, healthy Kodai Senga next year, dominant one. Ace caliber. Really looking forward to that. Eddie, thank you so much for the $2 holla. Appreciate that a lot, Eddie. What a beauty you are. Yoshima, thank you for the donations earlier, too. We see someone in the chat made a comment that I thought was important regarding my hat, actually. Take a steamer and damp towel and run it over the stain on your brim, and then use a suede brush to brush it out. Jeffrey, thank you for that regarding my hat. I will take a photo of that right now. Jeffrey, you remind me of one of those people that probably either bends your hats, that if you get them flat top, but you do it the right way, you have either a special clamp to bend them, or you steam it. You know, you feel like a hat kind of sore, because I feel like the average fan wouldn't be able to throw that out at me right away. Sometimes pessimism is correct. I agree. I'm not saying that pessimism isn't always warranted, but I think the optimism is also fairly equal there, especially when you hear everything I just broke down in the comparison, contrasting the pursuit of Manaea and Luis Severino, where they were a year ago versus where they were this past year, in comparison to Montas, and now what would be in Walker Buehler should Mets bring in Walker. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the Mets go about figuring out their entire rotation process. I really am, everybody. There are a couple more things, though, that we can touch on before we wrap up the live show. One of them can be on Roki Sasaki, just a little bit more, and then we'll get into some Scott Boras comments. Roki is a fantastic talent. We did hear reportedly through his agent, the same agent that I believe shares Joel Wolf, who shares the same agent as Kodai Senga, so the Mets have a slight advantage there. D-Mac go to Daha. Will Buehler take a 3-year deal? How much? I'm not sure if Buehler will go 3 years, and I kind of hope not. I'm not sure on the AAV, but I'd imagine it'll be, if Montas is getting 17, I'd imagine Buehler is going to be getting at least 20, right? I could see Buehler getting a little bit less than Severino based on last year's performance, but I don't think it'll be far off. I think Buehler will be right in that 20 mil AAV echelon. With potentially some unique perks there, some escalators there on some key bonuses, stuff like that. Kind of like how we talked about the bonus on a much greater level in Juan Soto's contract. The Mets can get creative there. But D-Mac, thank you for the donation. But talk about Roki Sasaki for a second, everybody. Let me just pull up his stats for you. That's Corbin Burns, who will not be a New York Met more than likely. Let's see. Not Flaherty. Not Eovaldi. Where are you? Come on, Sasaki. Not Jeff. Don't need him. Sevy, that's Crochet. Littell? That's Eovaldi. Bader's Buehler. Who the hell is that Buehler then? Oh. All right, give me 1 second, folks. I don't know why my Sasaki stats aren't pulling up, but I'll just pull them up real quick. There we go. Roki. Roki's fun. Roki's a lot of fun. I mean, I would love Roki Sasaki. Who wouldn't? I mean, this is, imagine all the hype and excitement with Yoshinobu Yamamoto, but imagine that, but better. That's how good Roki Sasaki is. Sasaki has higher upside than Yamamoto ever had in his career. He's 2.5, 3 years younger at least, which is so sick. And Sasaki didn't handle the media well during his time in Japan. And that probably had a lot to do with a young, coveted, oh so dominant right-hander wanting to leave the Nippon Pro Baseball League prematurely. I can imagine that traditionalist type Japanese reporters probably didn't take too kindly to that information and were further bothered by his wanting to rightfully argue not insensitivity, but lack of care for how his team in the MPB is impacted. Because if Sasaki waited a couple years longer, like what Yamamoto did, to reach a point with his contract at age 25, where the team that posts him gets a strong fee, in which it was $50 million going to his team, because that $325 million deal was taxed from the Dodgers to his team in the MPB, there isn't a tax nearly as significant of that nature for Sasaki, given how early in his contract he's trying to be posted, and now has been posted. So pretty much he burned a lot of bridges there in Japan when it came to the MPB and their media. And now a man who, again, is only at 22 years of age, younger than me, insanely enough, and I've looked up to him for a couple years now. He's so good. He may benefit from a smaller to mid-market team that won't have you in the spotlight as much. But when asked about New York specifically, his agent Joel Wolf said, I think he can handle it. And again, if Joel Wolf has anything to say on the relay how to handle New York, why the hell not just defer to his respective client and Kodai Senga? They got all the examples that they need right there. And what we heard reportedly as of yesterday is that Joe Wolf and that entire camp are very impressed with how Jeremy Hefner and everyone else are going about themselves in the Mets pitching lab. And what's great is that the Mets do have an advantage in that sense, as again, Wolf, being Kodai Senga's client, has known firsthand to a degree what has went on in the Mets pitching lab throughout Kodai Senga's tenure here. More little advantages that, again, may not seem like they're drastic, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to more than dollars in case of landing Sasaki, because you have a cap from $7 to $10 million that you can really spend on him, you need to have these other factors being of significant and to really amplify things in order for you to have a greater chance of landing Roki Sasaki and his services. Now, am I saying that this is enough to land him over the Dodgers or the Padres? No, I'm not necessarily saying that. But do not write off Roki Sasaki and the potential of him landing with the Mets. Because the same way that so many fans wrote off Juan Soto is the same way I'm going to tell you right now. Until it officially happens that he has landed elsewhere, anything is possible. Roki Sasaki, a dominant right-hander that throws absolute gas, 100 plus. My God, he would do wonders. He would do literal wonders in this rotation. Because you would sign him after you've already acquired a Manaea Simone Southpaw reunion, a Walker Buehler, Nick Pivetta, or something via trade, what have you. It would have been after that. So then you have an abundance of riches with your pitching options, and you've landed 2 key starters with one of those Manaeas, what have you, and then Sasaki after the fact. Yeah, we'd be acting like a kid in a candy shop then. I'd be beyond ecstatic should something like that transpire and happen. But that's it on Roki Sasaki, everybody. So, before we get out of here, let's hear some remarks from everyone's favorite mouthpiece, said nobody, and Scott Boras. Scott Boras, the famous client there, not only Juan Soto, but current free agent in the market, Pete Alonso, among others, had this to say on the Mets and on Polar Bear Pete Alonso.
What's of it going on with Alonso at this point?
A lot of market locomotion regarding Pete, and the Polar Bear Express is rolling.
That son of a... Yeah, him and his wordplay. Scott Boras talks about the Mets and what their commitment is when it comes to acquiring players.
Still have an appetite to spend money beyond what they did on Sunday.
This comes after Mike Puma asks a question, and I quote, "Do the Mets still have the appetite to spend big on a player after what they did on Sunday?" i.e. Juan Soto.
I think it's pretty evident that the Mets have decided that they're going to pursue winning and winning for a long time. They have made it very clear to us that they're not limited to signing one great player, but multiple great players. So, that they're going to be, I think, a very steady and heavy commitment to acquiring the best talent.
I wonder how Scott feels in all this as well, because the fact that there are no deferred payments on the contract, and let's say Scott Boras is making at minimum 10%, at maximum 20%. I don't see how he'd be getting 20, but let's just say, well, we'll put it in the middle in 15 then, for argument's sake, because I don't know if this is public record or knowledge. But Scott Boras, let's say he's taking a 15% cut from Juan Soto's gross salary of $765 million of a contract. So if we do that math right there at $765 million, actually, no, we'll go $805 million. Let's just say the Mets do void it, and they go all the way to $805. Now let's times that by 15%. That is fucking ridiculous. Actually ridiculous. 5%? I don't think it's 5. It's got to be at least 10. I don't think he's making 5. No chance. I mean 5. I mean, holy shit though. 15% of $805 million is $120 million to $750,000 gross. So Soto is getting $120 million gross his first year with the Mets because of the $75 million signing bonus. So let's bring it down to 10% because I'm seeing some arguments in the chat. Let's do 10% then. Times that by 10%. Scott Boras is making $12 million gross on year 1 of Juan Soto's contract. It's nuts. 5%, or if he's going to make 5%, then he's still making $6 million gross. Just the first year alone. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. And then you add in all the other player contracts he has, which goes beyond baseball. Stupid. Insane. You got to be a good negotiator. That's for sure. But holy shit. That, folks, is what I will leave you with. Mets fans, thank you all so much for watching live on a replay. I greatly appreciate that. This was a really fun live show tonight. Don't you guys worry. There's a great chance that we'll be live twice tomorrow, but there's for certain any chance we will be live at least once after we find out all the key quotes from Juan Soto and his presser. So as soon as that Juan Soto presser is done, folks, we'll be live right away. So look for right around 3:30 p.m. Eastern, and we may be back live later tomorrow night, barring changes. And obviously, breaking news, signings, rumors, anything of that nature happens at any time over the next 24 hours, we will cover it on the platform right away, as we always do all off season long. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for smashing that like and subscribe on your way out. Thank you for your continued comments and support here on the platform. And this is your friend Wardy signing out. Have a fantastic one, Mets fans. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets. Peace out.